Last week, I brought up the question, what would Katniss do? And I am trying to apply facing up not just to my life, as in how can I be happy and fulfilled and all of that, but to ask a deeper question, how do we get along as a species? This has always been part of the purview of philosophy, at least many forms of philosophy. Modern philosophy, and actually modern thinking in general, tends to be very self focused. How can I be happy? How can I feel content? How can I live a meaningful life? But ancient philosophy asked a broader question. An example is Plato's Republic, which describes how society functions. It's not just how can I be happy, it's how can people be happy? This big, broad question, and that was considered part of the big question of philosophy. I guess that's always been a part of it. I find myself, as I have been working through just, okay, how am I going to reorient myself now that this Christian framework, which I took as truth with a capital T, has been revealed as more of a myth with lessons and things to learn, but not a foundational absolute truth. So I'm coming up with all these different ideas, but I keep asking myself, yeah, but wait, what if everyone did that? Would that work for the world? Would that work for a culture? This, of course, is Kant's categorical imperative, and the question is, what if everyone did it? If you took it as a universal law, if you took your truth as a universal law for everyone, what would be the impact? It's actually a really good question. The fundamental claim that I'm making is that what humans need is not a new story. And in fact, no story will save us because stories are creations. Stories are expressions of who we are as a species, but they are lousy foundations. And when we try to make our stories truth with a capital T, whether that be a religious story, a personal agenda, a nationalistic story, whatever it may be, when we try to put our weight on those and make those the foundation of our existence, they turn into dogma. And very quickly we're defending truth. We're not just putting forth a story, we're defending the foundations of the universe. It gets very, very intense. And so we go to war with each other and we break into tribes and we are at each other's throats. Dogma causes us to tear each other apart like dogs. And so what I'm proposing with Facing Up is that what we need is not a new story, but a new way to regard story. And the key to this is what I'm calling the existential shift. This understanding that our stories are broken down by the three specters, which I talk about in previous videos. In Yarus, we are lost. Vanitas, we can't reach the end we're looking for. And Rapax, we are fundamentally self-centered, and there's just no getting away from that. Those three facts cause all of our stories to erode and leaves us in this horrible feeling of darkness and, whoa, well, if my story's not true, well, what will I stand on? What's truth? Well, how will I live? And that plunges us into the dark night, but opens the door to a new way of looking at our lives that is really from the standpoint of being rather than this conceptual doing. So we learn to walk by sight and accept what we are. Common sense becomes our common bond. Okay, so maybe you buy that, maybe you don't, but it does raise an important question. If story is not the foundation of our existence, if we really are bound together at a deeper level than that, not because of our story, but because we are human beings. We're bound together at the being level. Great. Well, we still have to live with each other. As humans, we still live in story. That is just part of being human. So if, okay, story's not the foundation, we still need to tell stories, and stories are what bind us together. So it raises the question, what's a good story? So I want to just give you four things that I think make a good story. The first one, and they all are related to things I've already said, but the first one is that a good story starts with common sense. In other words, it starts with the confession that our story is not truth with a capital T. We live in the same perceptual world. I'm convinced, okay, we don't see things exactly alike as humans. What we make of what we see can be very different, but what we actually see, the data going into our brains and how we process it as a species, it won't be identical, but it will be similar. And it's not so much what we see, but what we make of what we see that causes the problem. So it's not our perception that is the problem, it's our conception. It's the concepts that we derive from what we see. So a good story starts with common perception, or you could call that common sense. We come together as a species, just like any other species, knowing that birds of a feather flock together, not because of a common creed, but because of common perception. So the first thing that makes a good story is understanding the story is not the foundation. That's another way to just say the same thing. A second thing that would make a good story is that because it's not a foundation, in the face of the fact that we don't know the big answers to life's big questions, we choose wonder and enter into life as an adventure. There is this freedom to tell a good story. And this is very close to what I just said in my first thing, but rather than this fear and fables, oh yikes, we don't know what's true. Let's just make something up. Let's pretend that we know what God thinks. Let's pretend that we know that we are God. Let's pretend that my career is the central truth of the universe. So we eschew, good word, right? We shove to the side fear and fables, and we accept life as wonder and adventure. So a good story is an adventure. It's you want to call it a myth, you want to call it whatever you want to call it. It doesn't mean it has no meaning, but you start with this sort of light-hearted, okay, I'm releasing my grip on this as dogma. This is an expression of who I am, not the foundation. The foundation is, well, we don't know, but we choose to enter in and embrace our lives as humans. And so what story shall we tell? So, starts with common sense. It's seen as wonder in the face of not knowing and this choice to enter into an adventure of our lives. This would be the third feature that would make a good story is related to how we respond to the fact that when we get to the end and we're going, whatever our quest is, we get to it, and now we want to go on another quest. It's never the ending, the final ending that we're longing for. So a good story recognizes this, and a good story is characterized by play. We don't despair when we come to this. We understand that that's the way we experience reality as human beings. We can't get to that golden age. We can long for it. We can't ever grasp it and hold on to it. I accept that, and I enter into my life playfully, because knowing that, if there is a way to touch that eternal thread, it is not by pretending that we have it. It is by being what we are in this world in a spirit of play. So a good story is an adventure. It is playful. And then the final thing is that it is characterized by compassion and kindness. A bad story is dogmatic. And rather than being playful, you go to war with people who don't agree with you because they're dangerous. They're undermining truth, undermining your truth, your story, the story. But a good story begins with this humility. And so you enter in as adventure, there's this playful spirit to it, but that allows you then to look at other people in the world not as something different or dangerous, but as other human beings with the same perspective, the same kind of perception. And it gives you this ability to embrace everyone. Even people who are doing a different game, they're playing a different story. And so the question becomes not how do I convert them to my story? The question becomes how do we embrace each other, coordinate, harmonize? How do we put our stories together in a way that works for everyone? So you want to treat people not with anger and attack. You choose compassion and kindness for other people. So facing up is not dogma because it has room for every person and every kind of story. Even people who are are locked in dogma, you can at least understand that. I mean, we get that. We all fall into that. We all latch onto our story and hold on to it as if we are God and we have decreed, the eternal truths of the universe. We all get what that's about. And so as we look at each other, we laugh. We can laugh and lighten up. I like that word lighten up because it means in the sense of both sort of releasing, adding levity or humor, but also lighten up as in adding illumination. Lighten up. When we lighten up, we lighten up. I know this sounds maybe a little, I don't know what the word, like, who do you think you are saying these things? But I just don't think any story will save us. I really do believe that the only hope for our species is not a new story, but a new way to regard story. And I call that way of regarding the story facing up. And it happens when we go through the dark night, embrace ourselves as human beings, and then have this new perspective on the story that regards it as an expression of our existence rather than the foundation of our existence. Thank you for following with me on this. I'm glad you're with me. I want to tell you, I promised you at the end of last year that orientation class is coming, February 14th, and I'm looking for some people who will go through this class and give me some feedback. It will be short. It won't be like, I'm not talking about, I'm signing up for a college course or anything like that. I'm trying to make this really focused, short, and digestible. I want it to be entertaining, engaging, and something that really helps people make that existential shift. I put myself on the hook for getting this done February 14th, and I'm embarrassed to say I'm going to have to take myself off the hook. Julie and I have had the opportunity to move from our little apartment here into a house. And so this month we'll be moving, and there's a lot of disruption in our lives right now once we do that. So I won't make February 14th, but I promise you I'm working on this so hard because I really want to help people make this shift. And no one can do it for anyone else, but I do think it is possible to sort of outline this process of releasing the grip on the story and embracing your life as a human being, and then looking again at your life with the perspective of a storyteller, not someone who's spinning a web of story and then trying to make it a home. In the meantime, I would invite you to join the Facing Up Club, and that's something that we do on the first Tuesday of each month. And last month there were just a couple of us, well, three actually, but it was so good. I know we're just getting this started, And I know like going first is always scary, but there are real benefits to this too. So, for those of you who want to be some of the pioneers of the Facing Up Club, I invite you to join us, and you can see the link to the page below. Thanks, you guys. I hope that your day is just a beautiful expression of your human being, that your story is filled with adventure, play, and kindness.